Hello, I've been long planning to make an outfit inspired by this lady's apparel in the photo. Please tell me in a comment if you know what this hat is called. I'd like to hand stitch a complete outfit including underwear and accessories. I will try and be more helpful for beginners. I need to sew a pair of bloomers and at least one petticoat. I also want to make a detachable collar and a tie, but not this type I think. We'll see. I found this blouse pattern by Century Patterns. It comes with a booklet that contains plenty of useful information. This is an Edwardian blouse, but the booklet gives you tips on how to make it an 1890s blouse. I'm going to start this project with the blouse because at the moment I only have fabric for that. At first, however, I made a mock-up because I'm really scared to cut into this fabric. I bought this 100% cotton, probably manufactured in the 1960s. It was only 80 cm, 32 inches wide, and I didn't have much of it. I traced the pattern on parchment paper. It is very bad practice to cut a commercial pattern. You might need a different size later. I didn't have enough fabric for mistakes. Determining where my waistline is always seems an impossible challenge. I thought I would straighten the side seams and tackle the problem of the waistline later. The pattern was for a blouse with an Edwardian pouch, which I didn't need. The instructions tell you how to modify the pattern if you don't want a pouch. I ignored them and I did it my way, so I lengthened the front side seam at the bottom. Eventually, I didn't straighten the side seams but made the curve of the waist a bit less extreme. I also widened the shoulder just in case. As my fabric was very narrow, I had to cut the back in two pieces. If you end up having to do this, don't forget to add a seam allowance. I started with stitching the back center seam. I pressed the allowances. Thanks to the selvages, I didn't have to file them. After basting the blouse, I put it on. It didn't look promising. Don't despair if yours doesn't look promising either, it'll quickly improve. The fit was too loose. Before altering anything, I made the front placket. I simply folded the front edges to the wrong side twice. I made them 1 inch wide. Then I secured the fold with back stitches. I tried hard to make bigger stitches than I usually do. I managed 20 stitches per inch instead of the 26 of my last project. I decided to only make a collar band and not a full collar, so I would be able to wear the blouse with different detachable collars. I used the stand collar of my last blouse. The stand collar of any blouse pattern will do. I can never cut them the same size. I can highly recommend basting instead of using pins. It helps you work with more precision. It's important to use your tiniest stitches when you sew curves, so when you turn your piece to the right side, the edge won't be broken, but will have a nice smooth curve. Imagine drawing a circle with lots of small lines. The smaller the lines are, the more resemblance to a circle the drawing has. I notched the seam allowance. Notching helps the collar lay flat when turned to the right side. I cut the allowance of the curve very short. Notching wasn't quite enough. I attached the band but left a gap where I was going to gather the neck. I had to play with gathering a bit. At this point I wasn't sure how long a section I needed to gather. It was marked on the pattern, but you can't just always go with the pattern. It turned out I could have just gone with the markings on the pattern. I used to stitch between the two gathering lines, but I found if the gathers are not very dense, it's easier to sew on the bottom line. Only easier, not easy. I clipped and trimmed the allowances. What and how much I cut depends on the fabric. You can feel with your fingers where there's too much fabric. Sometimes the many layers of allowances stiffen the collar too much. Sometimes they give it just the right support. The seam allowance of commercial patterns is always too long for me. I folded and basted the edge of the inner collar band. I think you're supposed to notch the allowance first, but I never do it. It has never seemed necessary. If you're a good observer, you can notice that I hadn't finished the backstitching on the front placket. I whipped along the edge. Then I finished the front placket. Then I made the buttonholes. I decided to make them at this early stage, which made it much easier to fit the blouse. A pinned placket won't lay flat and won't give you the same optical illusion. When fitting a garment, you don't only fit the size, but go for the best illusion you can create. I used my usual vintage mother of pearl buttons. The shoulders were too wide. I shouldn't have widened them at the beginning. I took away more than what I had added, still better than ending up with too narrow shoulders. The armholes needed a lot of adjustment too, because the blouse was far too loose in the chest as well. I cut the sleeves. They were huge. I didn't have much fabric left, so I couldn't afford mistakes. The sleeve seemed short, but it was going to get a long cuff. If you want short cuffs, don't forget to lengthen the sleeve pattern. I needed to take away more from the shoulders and armholes. From the front, I lined the sleeve, but from the back you can actually see that I hadn't set it in right. I backstitched the seam but left a 3-inch gap. This blouse doesn't have proper sleeve plackets. Plackets are challenging, so I didn't mind not having to make them. I pressed the allowances. I decided to file them separately so that it would be much easier to deal with the gap, which actually is called a vent, I think. When you're working with stripes, you sometimes cannot use the grain line on the pattern. If I had followed the grain line on the pattern, the stripes of the sleeves would have continued on the cuffs, which would have optically lengthened my arms. The curve at the corners needed minor alteration. After gathering the bottom of the sleeve, I pinned the edge of the outside layer of the cuff to the gathered sleeve right sides together. I made a mark 2 cm from one of the ends of the cuff and I matched the other end of the band to this mark. I tried to spread the gathers evenly. I stitched on the bottom gathering line. I never bother about stroking the gathers, I think they are pretty anyway. I clipped the allowances to reduce barking. I folded the allowance of the inside layer of the cuff. I gathered the top of the sleeve. You can see a pin. There was a knot on the pattern there, which was very important. As you can see, the gathering wasn't symmetrical on the front and back parts of the sleeve. You can see a curve in the sleeve, which makes it so pretty. If you think of it, we hardly ever keep our arms completely straight. You remember the shoulders and the armholes needed further adjustment. I cut the surplus from one side and I placed it on the other side. This way it was easy to make them symmetrical. I set in the sleeves. I didn't remove the basting or gathering threads. I hardly ever do so unless I use a sheer fabric. I always simply overcast the edge. If you know me, you know how much care I usually take to finish the inside neatly. These seams, however, don't seem to bother me. When I cut the backs, I forgot to lengthen them, so now I had to shorten the front. This is one thing that no one calls attention to, but I cannot believe I'm the only person who always has to curve the bottom at the side seams. How else could you hem it? I folded the bottom twice and whipped it. I took away a lot from the Edwardian pouch, still the front was much longer than the back, which actually is a plus for me as my abdomen is extremely sensitive to cold and needs that extra protection. I sewed buttonholes and buttons on the cuffs. I'd run out of buttons and had to order more. I wanted to use a collar stud, which means I have to make a buttonhole on both ends of the collar band. However, I'm too worried to cut into the fabric because positioning the buttonholes is a skill I haven't perfected yet. A quick review of the pattern. The front placket is very simple, the sleeve is simple but very pretty, there's a lot of gathering but not a big thing. The chest is far too wide for me, I could have or should have chosen a smaller size, but I think I still would have had to alter it a lot. However, you'll never find a commercial pattern that you don't need to alter. I'm not sure I will use this pattern to make the gingham blouse. I will use the sleeve pattern and some construction details, but I will make short cuffs. Anyway, I want to show you in the future how you can alter or combine your patterns to make different styles or even different garments.